What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast. And while we are here to recap what happened over the weekend with the games in Washington and in Minnesota, before we get into that, we decided let's go ahead and go back to Thursday when Jake Fischer dropped another article with rumors in it. Facci, how are you doing, man?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. The Pacers are not doing as well, but I gotta say, I'm disappointed. Look, and one thing that I am happy about is Pacer Nation rallied together, maybe the most since we tried to bring down Jalen Smith's value. The problem was they rallied together to get me out of the arena against the Washington Wizards because I couldn't believe. I mean, that was supposed to break the streak. The streak was supposed to end right over there. When I say that, I mean the losing streak of when I am in attendance. My mentions were flooded with everybody saying, get out, leave. I mean, you would have thought I tackled Tyrese Halliburton during that game. Like, this was like some, Steve Bartman against the Cubs type of thing where, they had a. I felt like I was Bartman in that situation. I'm showing my age. That was like 20 years ago. But, man, disappointing loss. I'm looking forward to moving on, though.
I mean, between the Facci curse on Friday and then the number 5 person on your trade targets list playing against us on Saturday and Kyle Anderson, it was a rough weekend for you.
It was rough. And the second he logged minutes, everyone was like, there he is, the second star. It's like, okay, guys, all right. First of all, Kyle Anderson did have 10 assists. Thought he played a decent game. But he's never going to be a star. He's never going to be, I'm not even asking him to be a starter. All right. It's just like good player. Good player. That's all. And he played
Yeah,
well.
it was my fault, and I've said that on social media. I did not in my text specify second star. I don't know why. We've been talking about it, so in my mind I just thought, oh, Facci knows it's a second star. Like I shouldn't have to specify because usually we do like a top 10 trade target list if we're not doing just
Yeah.
second star. And then I'm like, that's your second star, and I'm like, oh shoot, I had to go back and look at the text, and I was like, oh, I fumbled the bag on that one. That one's
That's
on
all
me.
right.
It's like our truth when he's like, oh, that's on me, guys, that's
Mm.
on me. Remember when he used to do that?
Yep.
That was
Oh
so
yeah,
funny.
no, of course.
That's
People are never going to let me live. I feel like Kyle Anderson is just going to be associated with me wanting him to be a second star, which obviously, yes, we know not the case. But guys, I'm happy we were all able to have a good laugh about it.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the Facci curse more a little bit when we talk about that
Mm.
Wizards game. But the trade rumors are starting to heat up. We passed that December 15th date that is always the big date in the NBA when players that were signed in the offseason are now eligible to be traded. And so we heard a little bit of information come out of Jake Fisher's article. And Facci, I think you have that article up. Do you want to go ahead and just share the snippets that he posted about the Pacers?
I do. So as it relates to Pascal Siakam, he said it seems like Atlanta has been the most serious suitor for Siakam since the offseason. However, Jake also mentioned that Indiana and Sacramento are also interested. However, both teams appear more vested in the possibility of landing OG Anunoby than his quote older, less malleable Raptors counterpart. So it seems that the Pacers do still have interest in Siakam, but they are more interested in OG, which is how we felt because it feels that if one guy is maybe more likely to sign an extension, feels like it could be OG. He does solve a two-way need for the Pacers. But before I go into the next rumor, did you want to comment on this one?
Well, yeah, I think it's interesting that both those guys have been attached to the Pacers pretty much since last trade deadline. So clearly the Pacers have their eyes on one of these two guys maybe coming here. And it's interesting because you can frame it however you want, but there was another report out there that I think it might have even been from Jake Fisher's article. I can't remember, but I saw it on Twitter where they said the Raptors are wanting Benedict Mathurin in exchange for Siakam in any trade. And I'm like, okay, highly doubt that's going to be what the Pacers will give to the Raptors for a guy on an expiring contract that's 29 years old. Will be 30 in April. So that to me is why I think those talks probably aren't as serious. But to me, if I'm Toronto, my asking price would probably still be higher for Pascal than it would be OG. And maybe that's why the Pacers and the Kings are kind of looking more into that, seeing if OG is available. But from some of the stuff I've heard from like a Brian Windhorst, it seems like they're more invested in OG because of the age. So I just think that Masai Ujiri is incredibly hard to read, especially with what you think they should do. And last year we thought this is a team that could blow it up, and they ended up kind of buying into Jakob
Yeah.
Poeltl and you know
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they made some interesting moves, but these guys are on expirings now, or an expiring and a player option. So I think that it's smart the Pacers are invested in both because the Pacers literally have nobody that is playing at that size and at that level defensively on the roster currently.
No, no doubt about it. I mean, both players, Siakam and OG, would easily make this Pacers team better. No one can argue that. But yes, I know whether it's hearing that they want Matherin, or it's the fake trade proposals that go around. That's like Jarace Walker, 2 first-round picks, like Bruce Brown, another thing, and you're like, whoa, all that for maybe 55 games of Siakam. That sounds like a lot. So
Mm.
the asking price for me feels a little bit too steep right now. We'll see what happens as the trade deadline gets closer. But that was not the only rumor involving an Indiana Pacer. Jake also said there is plenty of expectation among rival executives that Indiana will be aggressive in exploring consolidation trades that raise its ceiling. Backup floor general TJ McConnell has drawn ongoing interest from playoff teams in search of a greater backcourt help. So, Alex, we've heard that TJ could be on the move earlier in the year. Obviously, he's an important piece for the Pacers in terms of you look at their situation now.
Yeah.
Tyrese Halliburton's out, Andrew Nembhard's out. You got TJ McConnell to count on, but there are a lot of teams that would be interested in McConnell. What does interested really mean? I'm not sure in regards to assets. It could be a player and a second-round pick. Maybe it's 2 second-round picks and a player. But either way, I mean, what do you feel that the Pacers should do about TJ McConnell?
Yeah, I think if there were more teams interested, then he would have been traded during the offseason. I think that it was a lack of interest from other teams to give up anything of significance for a backup point guard. And I understand that, it was great marketing for the Pacers when he did check into the game against the Lakers and Mike Breen said, TJ McConnell enters the game, one of the best backup point guards in the league. I thought, okay, thank you, Mike Breen. I don't know how much Kevin Pritchard slipped that to you or slipped money to you to
Yeah,
say that for us, but I love it. And, McConnell, he is a fan favorite. There's no doubt about it. I think that the organization values what he means to this franchise. And I think he means way more to this franchise than he does the other 29 in the league. So
no
it's
doubt.
more than just what is he doing on court. That is, why you want to keep him around long term. But at the same time, I think that they can't always look at things that way and have to do what's best for the team. But you're right. Situation they're in now, if they don't have TJ McConnell as like their, third string point guard or whatever you want to call it, their backup point guard, it could be a similar situation that we saw just 2 years ago when you're scraping the bottom of the barrel for a Kiefer Sykes or a Brad Wanamaker. So it's not a bad
Oof.
problem to have, but I do think that, that they've got Bruce Brown that can play the point. I actually thought he played decently well as that backup point guard. And the Minnesota game, we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then they do still have George Hill on speed dial if they need to make a trade and have him there. If they need an emergency point guard, someone that's a better than kind of just come in if there are injuries to your Nimhards and your Halliburtons. But I think long-term thinking, that partial guarantee on that contract for next year, if they want to make a big move in the summer, now is the time to get off of it so you don't just lose them for nothing.
I definitely agree. It's about $5 million that's partially guaranteed for next year. And you do know that if you really have to trade McConnell, you definitely can. There will be teams that will be very interested in TJ McConnell, especially as the year goes on. I mean, if any injuries happen at the guard spot, TJ McConnell has to be one of the first names that comes to mind that is available and can help your team. But I agree that even if McConnell was out of the rotation to start the year, or so they planned, it didn't make sense to trade him for a second-round pick and another guy that was not going to play, because that player was not going to bring the same locker room impact that TJ McConnell was going to play. Once you get closer to February, things could obviously change. And obviously, you hope that Nembhard and Tyrese Halliburton are healthy enough to be able to move forward and not have, a guy like Nembhard's situation right now where he's been in and out of the lineup and you really feel that you could use TJ McConnell. But nice to hear that there is still a lot of interest around the league for McConnell.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good veteran guy that's still, what is he, 31 years old? So
Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's got a good basketball left in him. He's, at the end of his prime. I would say that he's a good player. There's limitations to what he can do. I understand why fans love him because he plays with an energy that nobody else plays with every single night. And he does lift the fan base, when he comes into the game. I just feel like he raises the level of intensity in a game, and he goes out there and plays 100 miles an hour. My buddy Lincoln texted me. He was at the Minnesota game because he lives there, and he said, "You really don't appreciate how hard TJ McConnell works until you see it in person." And I thought that was a great point because
That's a good
there's a
point.
reason why this coaching staff and this fan base has fallen in love with him is just because of the way he plays so hard. It's kind of what Indiana style or Indiana basketball represents to people. Like when you think of Indiana basketball, you think of TJ McConnell and the way he plays. So I'm not saying to trade him just to trade him, but my thought
No,
is if they feel like they're going to probably cut him to create that cap space in the offseason, you got to move him before the deadline and don't let him walk for nothing or, waive him and you just get the money and then let him go into free agency or try to find a trade in the offseason. I think just trying to get off that now would make the most sense.
I think so. I think we wait until the deadline because I know that now, obviously, the Pacers brought back James Johnson. So you do have another veteran in the locker room, one that is also very respected. We've had countless Pacers come on our show and just pinpoint how vital James Johnson was last year. So that does help to have an extra vet in
Yes.
there because to start the year, the Pacers were very thin on veterans. And TJ McConnell was probably helping out far more than anyone could ever put into words. So I think now you don't want to say, hey, it makes him a little bit more expendable. But to your point before, you got to imagine that the Pacers do check in with George Hill from time to time just to, see, just similar to probably how they did it with James Johnson. Keep those lines of communication open. If the Pacers are to move on from McConnell, I think you could bring in a guy like George Hill that wouldn't really expect to play, but can still round out the roster as another veteran if
And that's
needed.
kind of what they need right now. And I think that's why Jake said the Pacers are looking at making a consolidation trade because
Yep.
they just have too many guys that you probably could give minutes to. And it's been kind of a blessing that the injuries have allowed other guys to get more of an opportunity. But with that being said, when those guys come back from injury, how does the whole rotation shake out again? And if a guy's playing really well and someone comes back that's playing in that same position, do you just tell that guy, well, thanks for your, 3 weeks of playing really hard. Now you're back to the third string. It's like, okay, it's tough. And I think that the Pacers understand that they are in a tough spot where they basically need to get some of these guys out of here to get some of these younger guys some more playing time to see what they actually have. And we finally got to see a little bit of it against Minnesota in real minutes, but we'll touch on that here in a second. But I think that that's good enough conversation on that Jake Fischer piece. We'll continue to monitor that as we get closer to the trade deadline. But before you know it, Facci, it'll be here. We're only like what 40, 50 days away from it.
Yeah, it's gonna sneak up on us. It's crazy. We're like kind of like a third of the way into the season at this point.
24 games in. We're 12, I think. Yeah, or 23 maybe because no, we're 13 and 11, 24 games in. That's right.
24, yeah. So think about that. It's just like before you know it, the season's already we're getting there. It ain't the beginning where we're still trying to learn about this team. So 24 games in, that is 29% of the season
Mm,
right now.
yep.
We're starting to get a real idea of what this Pacers team is. I don't think we have all the answers yet, but it ain't like in the beginning where you drop a random game to Charlotte, you go, nah, whatever, we're going to be just fine. Now we're starting to be like, well, man, we got some problems, but still plenty of time to be able to fix it. And I still think, hey, you mentioned roughly 50 days to the deadline. That's when you need those answers, kind of solidified by.
We got a month of January that's going to be really tough. And then you've got the rest of this month that's got some challenges too. So the Pacers schedule does not get easier. They've had a pretty home heavy schedule at the beginning of the year, and you just saw them go on a 2 week long road trip, 12 days in total, that really just kind of, I think took the wind out of their sails a little bit, Facci, as you kind of saw them dwindle in those last two games on the road. But let's go ahead and jump into that game at Washington. You were there for the game. Some big news dropped a couple of days before the game, I believe, that Washington's going to be moving to Virginia. Is that right?
It is. It's very interesting. Obviously, I lived in the area for 7 years. This was a move that no one expected. For a sports team to leave DC, like the city over there, go over to Virginia, very interesting move. For the fans and all that. where the Wizards played was very accessible. You could take the metro in, like the train, and Uber in is very, very easy. This is going to be tough for fans, but obviously it's supposed to be a very, very state of the art arena where they play right now, Capital One Arena. There is nothing to it. I mean, there's nothing about where the Wizards play that you go, oh wow, now this is like a great arena for fans. So we'll see what happens a few years from now. But yeah, the other news in that was okay, how do we get a win over here? A get right game against the Wizards. That is not quite how things went down, and you thought things would have been different. Pacers were up 8 early on in that game. And I thought, hey, you know what? This is going to be a really high scoring game, maybe a back and forth affair. Pacers went cold in the second quarter, and honestly, the Wizards never looked back. I
Yeah.
mean, Alex, what do you think it was in this game that really had the Pacers come out so stale?
A couple things here. I think one, they were coming off an emotional high against Milwaukee, probably feeling themselves a little bit too much and saying like, okay, we've really gotten their heads. We're competing with the upper echelon teams of the Eastern Conference, and thought, oh, we got Washington. They've won 3 games at this point. This will be a cakewalk. I think they weren't mentally prepared for this game, and I think that also goes into the fact that they were probably just tired of being on the road. It's been a long road trip. And I know you always make fun of me for saying, I even threw that in the article.
You
Facci
did?
always makes fun of me for saying, guys want to be in their own beds. But I'm telling you, when you're traveling for, 12 days, it just wears you out eventually. And I know that it's state of the art stuff, and I'm not making an excuse for these guys, but I do think that does play a part in it. These guys were just ready to be home and just get some kind of sense of a routine down, because it was just crazy. And I think that you just can't help it. It's just the human element of overlooking teams that are not playing well. I mean, 3-20 coming into that game, I would have probably overlooked them too if I was any player.
Oh, of course. I mean, I was joking around with my friends, and I was like, I paid good money for these tickets. I want to see Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma act a fool. I want to see them do those, where they shoot it and they think it's good and they turn around and it clanks off the rim. Like, I wanted the circus show that you see on Twitter of the Wizards, and that was not what we saw. And, it's funny because you always do mention that, these guys, just your own bed. That's how I imagine. I imagine Miles Turner like getting back to his own pillow and being like, like my pillows. Like, all right, I'm back home and in my area. But it makes sense because I know it sounds crazy, but even when I go on a vacation, if it starts to stretch, getting close to a week, you're like, I'm kind of ready to go home now. Like I just want to get back to my routine, just like you mentioned, just normal. 12 days the Pacers were out and about between Vegas and coming back for the regular season games. That's a lot. That's
Yeah.
that's 3 road games in 4 nights, 4 games in 6 nights. And also, to your point before, the high of making it to the in-season tournament and playing the Lakers, like wherever it was the most watched non like Christmas
Christmas Day.
Day game in the last 6 years. Almost 5 million fans watched this game. And then you play Detroit. Like it's hard to get up for that. And then so on. You play Milwaukee, but Milwaukee's really trying to hunt you instead of us being, the hunter. And then I just feel like after that, the Pacers were just not able to get up for each and every game. And I feel like other teams are starting to give us, you don't want to say their best effort, but they ain't overlooking Indiana like they did earlier in the year. And I felt like when the Pacers, when they got hit in the mouth, they did not respond against
Mm.
Washington. And we saw guys like Kuzma and Jordan Poole each score 30 or more. We saw Corey Kispert score 23. It was like they got whatever they wanted. And man, things just got worse for the Pacers. Obviously, we know Tyrese gets hurt. It was just that game where it was the perfect storm of everything going wrong.
Yeah, and that's what Chris Neri even said on the broadcast. He said it was one of those games where nothing went right. And I felt this when I was watching, and I said, when Corey Kispert flies by, drives by a defender and dunks the ball and is like screaming at the top of his lungs, that's not a good sign.
No.
Uh, I thought Bilal Coulibaly looked really good in this game too, Facci. And
He did, and we got to give him a moment because I think these players, Koulibaly and Jarace Walker, are going to be linked for a few
oh, for
years.
sure.
And not going to lie, I liked what I saw in Koulibaly, and I went, oh no. I went, oh, he looks good. and he's young, just like Jarace Walker, but we knew his ceiling for Koulibaly is really high. Would he
Yeah.
ever reach it? I don't know. But so far, and obviously he's given a far more opportunity than Jarace Walker's given. But Bilal Koulibaly looks like he's going to be a good player in this league.
I told you that that hat, when he put that hat on, it was going to be reminiscent of when Kawhi Leonard put that hat on. And we're going to see that photo for years and years to come.
I really hope not.
I have a feeling we will, especially if he finds a way to get out of Washington, because right now they're just, I mean, even though they won this game, I will just say this. In this game, to me, what I saw a lot of was they play the second fastest pace in the league. We play the first fastest pace. So it was going to be a track race the whole time. But the problem was the Pacers were a step slow the entire game,
Mm-hmm.
and Washington looked way faster. So it looked like they were fresh, they were sharper, and they were just able to kind of attack us and beat us at our own game. It wasn't even like we were playing against a team that was like super long and lengthy. They just, every 50-50 ball they got to, I felt like they were just the more aggressive team, the team that wanted to win more. They were definitely hungrier than we were. And I think it has
Way
nothing to
hungrier.
do, I think it has nothing to do with the fact that we were, had a target on our back because we made the in-season tournament championship. I think they were just desperate for a win. Would they lose 6 games in a row before this one?
Something like that. I mean, they only had one win at home.
Yeah.
So it's just like all everything you could say is just that the Wizards needed and wanted this game more than Indiana, and I just felt like it showed early
Yeah.
on. Like once the Pacers got down, they were never a threat again. I don't think I remember them even cutting it to single digits right when they went down in the second quarter for the rest of the game.
Yeah, it was. That's what I think I actually put that in my article. They got down by 11 and never saw a double digit or never saw a single digit deficit again. And you got to give it to them. They came out and just smashed us in the mouth. And I felt like fast break points was huge. They doubled us up on fast break points. And like I said, they just every aspect of the game they were better. And besides, they had 4 more turnovers and they made 2 less threes, but they also shot 13 less threes than we did and shot a much higher percentage at 48%. So they were just able to do what the Pacers weren't able to do, and they also were able to get into the paint. The Pacers give up a lot of points in the paint. We know that. But, I just 137 points to Washington, like it doesn't surprise me because our team's defense has been just so garbage. But when Miles Turner goes 2 of 10 from the floor for 6 points and Bruce Brown goes 2 of 7 for 4 points, you're not going to win a lot of games. Buddy Hield, 4 for 14 for 11 points. It's like the most efficient player on the team probably in this game was Isaiah Jackson. The only bright spot I felt like was really him. And then you had some moments from Obi Toppin who played pretty well, efficiently wise. But Isaiah Jackson, you could feel like there was an energy when he came in the game. But other than that, I was just like, what is happening?
So your point on Turner. Turner hit those 2 baskets in the first quarter.
Yeah.
He didn't make another one. I
Yeah.
think he had either the first or the second basket, and then I remember he had 5 points,
Yeah.
in the first, and he scored, I think, a free throw after that. So that he totally disappeared. That was tough to see. Isaiah Jackson absolutely deserves a shout out here because seeing it live, it was like he was that one player that I was like, wow, okay, he really caught my eye being there, and I just feel like he's put together quite a few games now. Like this is not the Isaiah Jackson of old. Like every now and then, maybe once or twice this year, he picked up a couple fouls early on. I was like, oh, this isn't good. But like I feel like he's been far more consistent this year. And when you saw 20 and 13, 6 offensive rebounds, and on 10 of 13 shooting, it's like, man, Isaiah Jackson really he's taken a step forward. And I remember before, first of all, he did all that in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
He had 20 and 13 in 20 minutes.
And
Like,
5 fouls
wow.
too.
Yeah, I mean, of course, obviously. But I remember before the year, it was like, oh, well, what do you do? Do you pick up the option just to do it? It would have been crazy for the Pacers to not pick up his options. So I'm glad that they did. Even if the rest of the season doesn't work out well, he's still so young. He's taken steps forward. I'm happy of the growth we've seen early on from Isaiah Jackson. But other than that, I mean, in the game, I saw Ben Shepherd come in the first quarter. The
Yeah.
first quarter. I was like, whoa, this could be this could be a big night for Ben Shepherd. It wasn't the case, and there's nothing against him in this game. I just thought it was interesting that he came in the first quarter, but we got to see actually a little bit of everybody in this game, so
Yeah.
that was fun to see.
Well, I think Rick was probably just trying to make his rotation a little bit, bigger, knowing these guys were tired. I think that's really what it came down to. And so it's like, all right, if Shep can get going, he played well in that Milwaukee game. Let's
You
reward
did.
him. He had that, what was it, 9-0 run, was it basically from him? So
Mhm.
when they kind of made the starters come back in for the Bucks, maybe it was like, okay, we'll reward him by giving him some first quarter rotation minutes, see what he can do. And I don't even think he shot the ball once. So in the first
Yeah,
half,
you did. It was 0 of 1. I mean,
0-1.
in the end, it's not like he had this big opportunity to do anything. I was just like, when I saw him check in, I was like, wait, am I missing something? Is somebody hurt? Somebody out? But it was cool to see. And then other than that, I mean, obviously got to see Jarace Walker live for the first time in person. It was cool. He had a couple baskets. But overall, that was a game that I really wanted to forget, move on. Pacer Nation, I'll give it to you. Y'all handed it to me. I mean, really, truly, I was like, this is wild. But it just shows that we got some awesome listeners that really do tune into the show. Actually, I ran into a couple of our listeners there. That was awesome. Braxton, if you're listening, hey, great meeting you. I'm sorry, I forgot your friend's name, but Braxton, hey, it's great meeting you. And man, we got some die-hard listeners. I really just want to take a moment to appreciate everybody.
Yeah, I mean, how long has this Facci curse been going on? When's the last time they got a win? Like what
I,
year?
honestly, I want to say at this point, because this was the first game of this year, we're talking, I think, at least 3 seasons. It could go back 4 seasons because at one point it's the last 6 games. I hit like 3 games last year, all in different arenas. It was Indiana, Brooklyn, Madison Square Garden. Oh, I hit 4 games last year, and in DC. They lost all 4 of those.
They lost
This
in
game is
DC
5.
last year when you went.
Yeah, they did. Even Turner had I think it was Turner's big night. Whatever it was, they lost that game. So it's at least 3 seasons that I could tell you, which is
Facci,
really sad to
Facci,
say.
Facci.
I know,
The curse is
I
real,
should
man.
I shouldn't reveal this. I shouldn't. But Tyrese Halliburton got hurt at 2 of the last 3 games that I've been at, and it really upsets me.
Dude, you
Tyrese
need to
banged it.
stop.
Tyrese banged his knee, proves it did not return in the Washington game. And I was at the Knicks game when the season went
That's
downhill
right.
when Tyrese got hurt. And that made me sick because it was just like I started looking down and being like, what did I do? Like, was it me? And it's just I need
I think it
Tyrese to
is.
recover. I need him to almost also acknowledge, like, yo, that was no one's fault. It was just my own. I need to be cleared, is what I need.
I guarantee if we ever get Tyrese back on the podcast and you tell him that you've been at the 2 games he's got injured at, he will ask you to not come to any more games.
I would respect him for saying that because I think anyone would. I think anyone
Yes.
would be like, hey man, like for my own health, please stay at home. But
Yeah.
I love this team. I gotta be there. I enjoyed rooting them on. I would have went wild for a win to be there in person. I mean, truly feel like I would have been ending like a playoff drought or anything like that. One of those, like maybe pop my own little confetti or something like that. It would have been great, but I ain't done yet. I still got a couple more games that I intend to. Got to snap the streak somehow. Gotta.
How are we
So
gonna do this though? I just don't know if it's gonna happen.
I know. It's
I mean,
February.
literally, somebody called you a Swifty on Twitter
Yeah, I
too.
mean,
Where
people were
where did
getting
that come
clever.
from?
I have no idea. People were getting clever. I mean, really. I mean, I was getting politely assaulted on Twitter by some good fans.
I
So I'll
was
I'll say that.
I was appreciating you being a good sport by liking people's tweets that said it, but I noticed that none of the tweets where I put out you like those.
I
You're
mean,
like, I'm not liking his. Screw him. I'm mad at him. You're like, this is your fault. Only reason why this is a real thing is because I made it a real thing.
this is true. It is true. I
I
could
said
have
I,
brushed this under the rug.
I
Really
said I
could
can
have.
really feel Facci's like disdain for me right now. Like I was afraid to text you on Saturday to get our schedule figured out. I'm like, I think Facci's mad at me.
Well, I had to tell my friends that I was with. I was like, hey, fellas, like, I just want to cue you in a little bit. There's kind of this talk of a curse going around. Like the Pacers have lost the last 6 games. And like one of my friends who's been at a couple of those, he was like, "Wow, you're right. Like, when was the last time they won when you were here?" And I was like, "We're gonna win tonight. We're gonna break the streak.
So
It's gonna
you
be
talked
great."
about it
And
before?
I I was overly confident that I think I told everybody, "Hey guys, there's like this joke going around like about a curse. Like it ends tonight." and it's just like I made it way worse.
You jinxed it by coming on the podcast saying that the curse is over, the streak is over. You told all your friends before. You spoke it into existence.
I know. All I wanted to
Oh,
do is come on here and go ding dong, like the witch is dead, like the curse is gone. I wanted it. I like played it out in my head, like, oh yeah, like when I get back Sunday night, oh man, this I'm gonna unload, and it's just like, nope, never mind.
oh man. That is the curse of Michael Facci, just like your birthday song said. Avoid the curse, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep.
But speaking of a curse, obviously Facci got Tyrese hurt, so we weren't able to see Tyrese against.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We weren't able to see Tyrese ended up banging up his knee. And honestly, I think he probably would have played through it if it was a playoff game. I
I
think he
think
was
so.
tired and he wanted a break. And he bruised his knee up a little bit. I mean, he obviously came up hobbling, but I just think that at this point, they've been playing so many games. He's got a lot of attention, playing a lot of minutes. Probably just wanted a game off, especially when you probably knew you weren't going to beat Minnesota. That was going to be a tough one to win. So I think they were trying to get that victory against Washington and then just kind of coast into Minnesota and probably just expect it to be kind of a scheduled loss, considering it was their third game in 4 nights against the best team in the NBA with the best defense, the best defensive rating in the NBA. But in addition to that, Facci, they had some issues getting to Minnesota from DC. Their flight wasn't able to fly out after the game, so they have to stay in DC overnight. They were able to get that figured out. Then they flew in the afternoon to Minnesota and then they just pull up to the Target Center. So they don't even stay in a hotel and they go straight from the plane to the arena. It's just a weird sequence. You don't usually see this with NBA teams. And then they go right into shoot around and get ready for the game. I mean, just a weird sequence of events.
Illusion, NBA's against us, but no. I just think it's unfortunate. I think when that is also thrown in there, it's like the odds were stacked against the Pacers. You got no Tyrese. You're basically pulling up to the game and then playing, so you're out of your routine. The Timberwolves already a really good team. I had very low expectations,
Yeah.
but in the first half, I was very surprised.
They played
The
their butts
Pacers
off.
really hung around. They only trailed 57-55.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. And at one point, the Pacers were leading for a while. But yeah, things obviously changed. A third quarter really busted that game wide open. And I just felt like, in your article, you had a lot of great stuff, but the power of a second star. I mean,
Yeah.
Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, those two players combined for 77 points.
Yeah.
I mean, they had moments. It was like Towns had, I think, 14 in the first quarter. Ant had 0 in the first quarter, but then I think Ant had like almost 18 or 14 or 18 in
18,
the
I
second
think.
quarter. 18 in the second quarter. It was just those two players were so good for Minnesota, and obviously they're already a really good defensive unit. So when they got those guys combining for 77, yeah, it's going to be tough. But Alex, here's the thing: it wasn't just those players. In classic fashion, I mean, Minnesota shot a season high 56% from the field, a season high 60% from 3-point land, and a season high 18 makes from 3-point land. That's what happens when you play the Pacers. You set season highs, and we can't have that be the case for just about everybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, just the fact that Anthony Edwards gets 2 quick fouls in the first quarter, you think, okay, how is this going to play out for him? And then he's able to come in the second and just go off like he did for like 18 points. And the Pacers literally just sit there and play the same coverage on him over and over and over again. See no real adjustments. The Pacers have done a very bad job, to me, when a guy is cooking, trying to double team them. We can go back to the Bucks game when Giannis is going off. They didn't double team. They just left him on an island by himself with whoever was guarding him. And I'm like, what are we doing? We don't have that type of team that can guard, a Giannis or even a guy that can really guard Anthony Edwards. Like Anthony Edwards is a great player, and I think he's a superstar in the making. Like he was
Definitely.
fantastic. But you can't sleep on Karl Towns. And I want to give Karl Towns a lot of credit because that was a guy that seemed emotional. And I still think he is, but he seemed very emotional and very kind of like, no, I'm the leader of the Timberwolves. This is my team. But then Anthony Edwards kind of was like, bro, just chill. It's my team. But come join us, be a part of this because
Yeah.
there's a lot of trade rumors out there about Karl Anthony Towns. But instead of, buying into like, oh, I want to be the guy, this, that, and that, he's really bought into that second role and kind of let Anthony Edwards lead the team. And I think Chris Finch has done a great job with finding ways to just allow Cat to play with Gobert and really find some connectivity there. It took a little bit of time. Everybody killed them last year for that trade, but it's
Oh
paying
yeah.
off. That defense is huge. Their front court is huge. Everybody, the three guys in their front court have like a 7-foot wingspan with McDaniels, Towns, and Gobert. So it's really something special, like what's cooking in Minnesota. And they've kind of built that roster via trade, but they also built it via building through the draft and just kind of finding the right players to target. And while I don't love Rudy Gobert and I don't love what they gave up for him, he's a great defensive center that I think he's in the right system there with the team they've built together. But the Pacers, like you said, they hung in there tough. I thought that they were really figuring things out, and Aaron Nesmith was on fire in the first half. I don't think he missed a basket until the second half started. Maybe it was the third quarter, but him and Jarace Walker played some really good minutes, and I felt bad for Nesmith though because they subbed him into the game, and they're like, okay, go guard Towns. It's like the dude's 7 foot and Nesmith is 6'5". And so then like he scores on him. The next play, he's got to guard Naz Reid. And I'm like, this is the Pacers' problem. They don't have fours. And that's when Carlisle's like, okay, I guess I got to go to Jarace Walker. And it actually worked pretty well. I mean, obviously Towns still scored, and I know Naz Reid still had some good moments, but nobody was just like going down there abusing Jarace Walker, play after play after play. They kind of found different ways to attack, and that's when Anthony Edwards kind of attacked, who Nesmith was guarding. But like I said, nobody can guard a superstar like that one-on-one. You got to throw different looks at him defensively.
No, you have to. And what we're asking Nesmith to do this year, it's insane. It's insane. At like 6'5", I mean, he's guarding the guys that he's guarding, Giannis and Tatum. He's giving up size every single night. And I just feel like this is what we're doing now is what we said we weren't going to do. Last year when he was, playing out of position, playing the four, it was just like, okay, well, hey, you're not going to have to do that this year. And it's just, I feel like he's the only guy that we could really trust to throw at, superstar-esque players. And I love his effort night in, night out. I just feel like he's gotten so much better as a player, but it's always such a tall task for Aaron Nesmith. And I felt like, hey, he was a big part of why the Pacers were hanging around and everything. But there were some guys that did not show up in this game.
Yeah.
And just to go around it, I mean, Obi Toppin had 7 points in the first quarter. He finished with 7. He actually only attempted one more shot after the first quarter.
Yeah.
Buddy Hield goes scoreless. I mean, Buddy can score with some of the best of them. To see Buddy go scoreless in 18 minutes, 3 turnovers, that was tough to see. Turner, I mean, Rudy Gobert, Gobert had his number in the past. He really did. And I just feel like this is a Turner game that you kind of want to forget about. 2 of 7. So now you're talking about the last 2 games. He's made 4 shots combined. It's just not the Turner that we saw earlier in the year. So I think that when you're talking about those few guys, I mean, 3 of your starters not really showing up. 3 starters combined for 19 points. It's not going to get it done.
No, it's not. I've got a bit of a hot take here, Facci, and I want to hear your thoughts on it. Obviously, we know what this Pacers team is going to be hard to build moving forward. You got this offseason where you can go out there and make a big splash, but then you got to worry about Miles Turner entering that expiring contract.
Mm-hmm.
Watching that game last night, to me, I think that I'd almost rather have a guy like Naz Reid at the center position for the Pacers versus Miles Turner. And part of the reason I say that, 40% three-point shooter, 50% field goal shooter. So he's a much better shooter. I think he plays much more athletically and the style they want to play. And personally, for me, I feel like Miles has really taken a step back this year in terms of how quick he is. We've talked about it a few different times on this podcast, but he just seems like he's a little bit slower to me. Not saying that he's a bad fit, but if you're looking at the price that it's going to, again, the contract Naz Reid has now, I think it's like, what did you remember what he signed for in the offseason?
It might have been roughly like $12 million per year. I'll look it up while you talk. Yep, well, I got it.
You got it?
It's coming up right now.
Okay, I got it right here. 3 years for $41 million. So 13.9. I would rather pay my center that's going to shoot the ball that well and play that kind of like above the rim type style that he can play, versus a guy that is coming off this big contract. What was it? $72 million for 3 years for Miles Turner with that extension.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he's got a discounted contract now, but though that year that he got an extra 17, $18 million in his contract, is he going to want 25, $30 million when he enters free agency? And to me, it's like, I just don't think that that's worth it for Miles and what he's brought this year. I think I've kind of been a little bit disappointed with Miles overall this year. I think he's taken a step back just a tiny bit, especially when you look at efficiency and points per game. Like the numbers are down, field goal percentage wise, 3-point percentage wise this year, and he's scoring less than I think it was 18 points last year. Now he's about like 16 and a
Yep.
half. So he's dropped in points per game. To me, he's regressed from last year. And it's like, okay, were we kind of worried about that because we knew it was a contract year? So I don't know. I know Naz Reid's obviously a backup, 6'9" power forward center. It's kind of a hot take, but I just feel like somebody like that on a cheaper deal is what I'd rather have at center than overpaying for Miles in the next couple of years.
Here's the thing. One, I've liked Naz Reid for a while, and I'm pretty sure I brought him up in a
You
random,
have.
how do we target him in a trade last year? And we were both like, I don't know if Minnesota wants to give him up. And they made a great move signing him for what they did. I thought that's a steal of a contract. And I think that Naz Reid, if he was a starter on another team, is putting up bigger numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Two, for Turner, I don't think anyone's going to say that Turner took a step forward this year. I think we kind of hoped, could he duplicate what he did last year? And to an extent, yes, he hasn't like regressed like drastically by any means, but from 3-point land, he is not where he was before. He is
32%.
he is struggling from 3-point land. The average in the league is between 35 to 36%.
Yeah.
So he's at 32%. So that's just not where you wanted to see. But also, Alex, rebounding. He is
He is
He's
what he
not
is.
taking. He is what he is. He's not. He's a roughly 7 rebound per game guy. That is who
Yeah.
he is. And I think that there's always that section of the fan base that hopes that he could rebound closer to 10. On some nights we do see it, but not consistently enough. Then we hoped, could he get to 8 to 9 in there? Like he's a 7.5 rebound guy. And I just feel like lately he's in a bit of a slump. He is, and we need to get him out of it because the Pacers don't have a clear-cut number 2 guy. But
Yeah.
for a decent chunk of the year, he was the number 2. And we've always said we feel better with him as a number 3. But if that's the case, then you got to be the number 3. You can't be 3.5 to 4, and we're still going to win. And some of these nights, the last few nights, Turner has not been there.
I would say over the last 5 games, from a consistency standpoint, I've been more impressed with Isaiah Jackson than I have Miles Turner.
Absolutely. No doubt.
Yeah, and I mean, I even thought Isaiah Jackson should have got more playing time than Miles did in the Lakers game. I mean, he was way more effective and more impactful down there on a guy like Anthony Davis. And Miles Turner, that was barbecue chicken left and right. I mean,
It was.
40 some points and 20 some rebounds, 20 some rebounds plus 4
Yeah.
blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I know he didn't do that all against Miles, but a lot of it was against Miles. And so you go and you watch the Bucks game, and everyone was kind of crapping on Miles for that. I'm like, well, Miles didn't guard Giannis in that game. He was guarding Brook Lopez, or who else was out there. So I'm not gonna put him on blast for that. But this is just who Miles Turner has been throughout his 9 years, and we were big on trading him over Sabonis, and we've kind of, backtracked on that a little bit. And I have no problem saying that Miles kind of showed me a lot last year. Like I love the energy and the excitement that Miles played with last year. And I thought that he's been a really good leader this year so far. But I feel like the veterans that you're needing to step up this season have disappointed more than they've impressed when they've needed a step up. Specifically Miles, specifically Buddy, and Bruce Brown. I do think that Bruce had a really good offensive game against Minnesota. He stepped up quite a bit without Tyrese being there, played a different role. And I kind of wondered if maybe that role could be something that he looks to, grow in throughout as the season goes on. Like, could he be more assertive looking for a shot even with Tyrese's back? Because I wouldn't be opposed to that. I just think that he kind of falls back into kind of letting Tyrese do his thing and just try not to upset the fruit basket. But when he needs to score, he's done a decent job at it. But Miles, to me, like it's just an up and down inconsistency with Miles, and I like him. I think that he fits what they're trying to do, but at the same time, he's got to be better. He has to be if he wants to be a long-term piece here and get paid handsomely.
He has to be. And this is someone who, in the beginning of the year, and you need to speak it into existence if anything's going to happen. But Turner was like the All-Star games in Indiana, and you're going to see me there. And it's like he's made those claims before, and it's like, come on. I want to see you there. But at this point, it's like even defensively from like an all defensive team like that chatter has died down. That
Yeah.
people are not being like this man's been robbed of all defensive teams like he's got to be on. It hasn't been there this year. And don't get me wrong, real good player, but we still wanted to see is there a next level that he could grow into, and I have not seen it this year. To your point on Bruce Brown, the last game that Bruce Brown played really well in against
Miami.
Miami, where no Tyrese Halliburton, you could see he could take on a bigger role, but we can't have him just fade away, and be, just another guy out
Yeah.
there because this is someone that we do have hope and expectations for. He is handsomely paid. We want to see a little bit more on a consistent basis. So, and then right now, Buddy Hield is someone that over the last few games, Alex, we got to throw it out there because I feel that when the Pacers are at their best, it's typically when Buddy's at his best. He adds an extra element to this team. Over the last 3 games, 3 losses, he's 7 of 27 from the field and 4 of 20 from three. One of those games he got shut out in. It's just you can't expect to win those games. And Turner over the last 2 is 4 of 17 from the field. We need those guys to at least be 40 to 50% shooters. That they can't be having games where it's 2 of 11, 0 of 6, and anything like that. They're too vital to the Pacers.
I mean, especially if they're going to rack up 30 minutes a game. That's
Yeah,
the thing
exactly.
too. It's like this roster is too deep to be sitting, playing these guys extra minutes. I mean, I understand the whole entire reason why Buddy Hield got put into the starting lineup, and when he did, he played great. He played really good against Atlanta and Toronto, and he had a nice little stretch there where you felt like, okay, he broke out of his slump. He just needed to get back with Tyrese and be a starter. Well, water finds its level. We always talk about that, and that's kind of what happened. And I understand that every time you ask Rick or Tyrese about Buddy, they're like, "Oh, he's a good shooter. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about it." Well, eventually you got to look at it and say, "Okay, if he's not being productive, what are we doing here?" And he started the last 12 games, and the first 12 games he came off the bench. They were 7-5 when he came off the bench, and they're 6-6 since he started. The percentages have gone up since he has started, but he's also getting 6 more minutes a game and getting more field goal attempts. So I think that plays a part in it. But he's only averaging about like a point and a half more as a starter versus when he came off the bench. And that's in 6 minutes more per game, too. So, and that's just an average. And I'm sure some of those are skewed because he had some big scoring nights in games where he was awesome. Because I think that there's like 3 games, I believe it is. Maybe it was Miles that I wrote this about, but under 29% shooting wise for 3 games, and that just can't cut it. So I just feel like these veterans, it's bad to me when you've got Aaron Nesmith, TJ McConnell. TJ McConnell has stepped up. I feel like he's done his part. The numbers might not always be there, but he's done his part. But when you've got Isaiah Jackson, Aaron Nesmith, and Ben Mathern to a certain degree stepping up and playing with more energy in games that you need to win, that's when the veterans have to be the veterans. But that also tells you, besides Bruce Brown, Miles and Buddy have never won at a high level.
No.
Miles has never won a playoff series. Buddy's never been to the playoffs. And I think that kind of plays into it a little bit because they don't know what it really takes to get over the hump and win these big games that other players have had that experience of doing.
That is a great point. And it's true. And you do wish that this team had more experience in winning atmospheres. And that's why this in-season tournament run was so vital to this team. But the downside is that, in some of those games, Buddy didn't really show up. And that's what kind of worries you a little bit.
Or
It's like
Miles
against
in that big game against
Miles
the Lakers.
definitely, he hasn't been the same since that
No.
game. So obviously, everyone's going to snap out of it. Eventually, they'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, the way that Turner played and got fouled out and got dominated by Anthony Davis, and then the fact that Buddy went 3 of 11 against the Lakers, 2 of 9 from three. I mean, just not much was happening for those guys. You started to be like, okay, wow, we do have some good pieces over here, but long term, we do have to realize if the Pacers are to just run it back and re-sign a Buddy and lock up Turner long term, like, is it enough? Does this team have next gears like the way that we've seen it out of a Tyrese Halliburton or the way that we've seen it out of an Aaron Nesmith, guys that are taking their game to the next level? We need to see more of that because we hoped a lot of this growth would happen internally It's happened to some players, but some players just have not been able to take that step forward in the first 24 games of the season.
I totally agree, but I think now would be the right time to kind of close out the podcast talking about Jarace Walker. Jarace
Yep.
Walker got 24 minutes against Minnesota. They needed his size badly. And I will say this, Facci, for as worried as I was about him maybe overplaying, trying to prove his worth on the court, I thought he was very even killed. I thought that he only broke out of the scheme defensively maybe once or twice when he blitzed on a pick and roll coverage and got burned by Rudy Gobert in the pick and roll. But besides that, I thought he held his own pretty well and he shot the ball well. He had some really nice passes. Not all of them led to makes, but he was threading the needle, and you could just kind of see how he has such a good feel for the game. And I've kind of understood why he wasn't playing, and I've backed up basically Rick Carlisle's decisions with what my commentary has been. But after getting a small sample size of what he could do against the best defensive team in the NBA and really not being a problem, more so being part of the solution, I would say, to slowing them down a little bit, I think that moving forward, he should be getting consistent minutes as the backup power forward.
When you say, slowing them down, I think the game is starting to slow down a bit for Jarace Walker. I think in the beginning, it definitely did look very fast. I mean, even just a couple of games ago against Milwaukee, I mean, 4 fouls in 6 minutes.
Yeah.
You're starting to see it, but it's good experience. It is really good game experience. And that's how guys get better. It's like, when you watch, you can learn some stuff. Nothing's better than hands-on experience. So 24 minutes against Minnesota. That's a career high, obviously season high, however you want to put it. He's a rookie. But I think, in your article, you get some great stuff. If you look at the box score, you're not going to get blown away by 5 points. But I just think that he did make some smart passes. He had some good passes to Isaiah Jackson. But also that three-point shot has now actually started to look a little bit consistent, at least the last 3 games. He's shooting 50% from three over his last 3 games. So that's been fun to see. But also he had a couple steals. Little by little, I do think that he can't just be completely out of the rotation. And maybe it's just me watching Bilal Coulibaly look so good. It's at the fact that, he's been playing. Some of these rookies have been playing on a consistent basis. So it makes sense to say, yeah, week in, week out, you should get a little bit better. And I think that for Jarace Walker, he will get better. But I just hate the fact that fans are already ready to get rid of him, trade him, this, that. No, it's like he could be a really good pro for the Pacers, but it comes with being able to get consistent minutes also when they matter. And I think now he's starting to play a little bit more meaningful minutes than the last 5 minutes of a blowout.
Yeah, and I mean, I've made comments about if you have to throw him in a trade to get somebody, then you probably have to just kind of swallow hard and do it, even though it's a tough decision. But if he's not going to play, what's the point of keeping him around on the roster just to collect dust? I think that it doesn't make sense to kind of let someone that you spent so much, since you invested so much in, and not let him get on the court. But our good friend Chase Hoops, that's been a big supporter of this podcast, he messaged me on Saturday and was like, what do you think Jarace needs to do to, get into the games more? Or like, what are your thoughts on Jarace? You think he's a good player? I'm like, look, I'm just going to be honest with you. We have no sample size to really see what he can do yet. And it's really hard to give you an honest opinion without seeing what he can do in like real minutes. Like you can't throw somebody in at the end of a game for 6 minutes when they're down by 20 points and expect to learn a lot. You're going to learn some, but at the same time, they're not playing in the regular rotation with the guys that are playing consistently. Everybody's out there trying to prove that they belong. And it's just a different environment. Obviously they call themselves the green team because they're the ones that are the third stringers. Jordan Wara, Ben Shepherd, Isaiah Jackson was a part of that group before he ended up taking over for Jalen Smith, who got injured. And then, Daniel Tice was on that team. So, it was just a weird dynamic of who was on that, on that group right there. But I think that the game we saw him play against Minnesota was an example of what you can expect for the rest of the season. I mean, if he plays at his best, I think that you're going to see someone that's a competent defender, that's got a good feel for the game. But I also think just having that secondary playmaker out there, because I think he really does have that. And we saw like those sharp passes. These are not tough. These are not easy passes, excuse me. These are tough passes that he's making with ease. The bounce pass to Isaiah Jackson, the one that he found Aaron Nesmith on the baseline where Nesmith didn't actually shoot it because he wasn't ready for it. But if he knows that Jarace can pass like that, that's going to be huge. Now, shooting wise, you talked about it. It did look better. And if he can continue to improve that 3-point percentage, that makes you feel better about his, trajectory in the league. But last year we were spoiled because we got to see Nimhard. We got to see Ben Mathurin get out there and kind of showcase what they can do. And they did fail a little bit. They definitely failed after the first 25, 30 games of the year because teams started noticing what they did well and they were trying to take that away from them, especially Mathurin. But I think that Jarace Walker is in a good spot now where you kind of play him in that backup role. You don't expect too much of him, but you still let him get out there to get that on-court experience and just let him fail a little bit, but also learning what he needs to improve upon. Because right now, he's always been really good, and he's never had to go up against competition that's that much better than him or equal with him. So you can't really fail by allowing him to fail.
I agree. And here's the thing: the Pacers aren't too good to be able to be like, we just don't have minutes for Jarace Walker. This is a team that's like, you don't want to say is like stuck in the middle, but it's like they haven't quite arrived yet, and they have major problems defensively. That it's like he's gotta try a little bit of everything, And I know that there's only so many minutes that can go around, but we're in agreement right now. I mean, Obi Toppin has not quite been lighting the world on fire lately, and the Pacers are still searching for, who could be most effective at the four. So I do think there is opportunity. But I want to see more of him. I think everybody wants to see more of Jarace Walker. And guys, it ain't always going to be pretty. He's going to have times where you go, "What was that?" Or "Oh my God, he really got beat on that player. That's a bad turnover, bad shot." That's going to happen. It's called being a rookie. There's going to be a lot of that, but that's the only way to get better. You can only send him down to the G League so many times, or you could drop 30 and be like, "All right, but did he get any better?" I don't know. Obviously, experience helps, but you want to have real experience in meaningful minutes. To me, that's the only way for him to truly get better.
Yeah, and I think that if they were able to start Aaron Nesmith at the three, which I don't know if we brought up on the podcast, I know I
You
wrote
did
about it in my
not.
article. So I suggested in the article that the Pacers start Aaron Nesmith at the three and move Buddy Hield back to the bench. I just feel like it's time. I'm tired of seeing our team just get annihilated, to start games against, bigger wings. And I understand that Nesmith is only an inch taller technically on paper than Buddy Hield, but he plays 3 or 4 inches taller defensively.
It's a big difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you get some more size and defensive grit out there with Miles and Bruce. I think that's a really good, strong defensive three right there. Probably three of your best 5 defenders on this team. You leave Obi out there for the size you need at the four. Obviously, Ty's not going anywhere at the one. And then you figure things out on the bench. I think Ben and Buddy can figure it out where they can play together. I think that the spacing would actually help Ben having a floor spacer out there and a Buddy Hield. Now, if Nimhard doesn't play and it's more TJ, I'm fine with it. It's whatever at this point. I still think Nimhard should be getting more minutes, in my opinion. But you let Jarace play the four, and you let Jalen or Isaiah play the five, and I think that will just allow him to get back up 4 minutes, whether it's 10 to 12 a night, I don't know, but something along those lines, just so you can kind of get a better feel of what he can do. And if he's playing well, then try to get him some minutes with a Tyrese Halliburton, with a Miles Turner, see what that looks like before you just don't even let it have a chance to be experimented with. And that's kind of where I fall into like the fine line of like trying to find the right balance here. But I just think that if we've seen flashes enough, I think he's earned enough in this past game to get another chance in the rotation, especially against a team like the Clippers on Monday, who have a lot of bigs, a lot of forwards like a Kawhi and Paul George. They got some size on there. So how they go about that, I think they need to consider giving him a little bit more of a run.
I would like to see at least 10 minutes a night. I mean, it's really hard to do anything in 5 minutes. 10 minutes, you space them out, two different rotations. I think that would be good to see. But are we going to get a Daniel Tice revenge game against the Clippers on Monday?
That's the last thing I want to think about right now.
I know, but I do love a good revenge game. But I think for Tice, he'll be fired up. I think for the Pacers, no hard feelings at all. But always fun to go against Paul George. I think now these matchups feel a little bit different. There's not, the hate in the heart where we're really trying to, boo him like no other. I think that, you would like to think enough time has passed. But last time it was a shootout. You were there. I remember what Paul George had a killer game. I remember, but the
Yeah,
Pacers won, and
it did.
that was very fun. So I'm just excited. I want fans to be able to dream to say, you know what, Paul George, that's the guy we're missing. What if? Just let him have fun, but I want to get that win as well. I want to get back on track.
I hope Tyrese Halliburton plays. If not, it's going to be a long night. That's how I feel about this game. I mean, they're going to throw a lot at him. They're going to probably put Kawhi and Paul on him at different times. I'm sure they're going to put James Harden probably on Obi Toppin just because um, it makes
You know,
sense.
yeah.
I'm trying to think who else they'd put him on. Like, does he want to chase Buddy around all day? No. Probably put somebody else on him, Buddy, to do that. And then does he really want to sit there and guard Bruce? I mean, maybe guard Bruce, but he's pretty good at holding his own against bigs in the post. I know Obi doesn't play a lot of post, but I don't feel like Obi's gonna be really doing a whole lot offensively where he's just taking guys with the dribble and looking for a shot. He has yet to really do that with the Pacers. So
Yeah.
we'll kind of see. Can they get Zubac in some drop coverage and try to, you know, hit some threes over him? Maybe that's the key to win. I don't know.
I mean, I'm still a little bit scarred from the near, what, 30-30
30 lead
game.
down,
Yeah, I mean, whatever it was, I think he fell like one shy of it. I
like
think he had like
30 and
30 and
29.
29. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that should have never ever happened. That was like a low moment for Pacer basketball last year, but I don't expect that to happen again, but I'm just looking forward to a good game and getting back on track for this Pacer squad.
31 and 29 with 3 blocks.
It was insane. I mean, everybody in the arena was just like cheering for him. I'm like, how did we get to this point? Because you got to remember in that game, Paul George didn't play, Kawhi didn't play. It was like just like the backups for the Clippers. So
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna win. I didn't think we were gonna give up, almost 30 and 30 and lose. But crazier things happen. So
We beat the Lakers after that.
we did. We needed
And
that.
them hard game winners. So, all right, everybody, that's a long episode here for you guys today. Start out your week, so I hope you guys enjoy that. You got a little trade rumor conversation. You got a little recap of the Wizards and the Facci curse, and then you got some Minnesota Kyle Anderson conversation there with you, as well as Jarace maybe being a starter. What's going on with Miles Turner, Buddy Hill, Bruce Brown? I mean, there's a lot of stuff we talked about today. So
Action packed.
it was action packed, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. But Facci, go ahead and let the people know where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok, Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/setting the pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can find all of our video content on there. But I do apologize because the recap video for the Minnesota game somehow got lost in the cloud, so I was not able to post that one. If you guys were looking for that, I do have the audio file that I could have just uploaded without video, but did not want to do that. I thought about even downloading some clips of the game and just putting our audio over clips of the game, but didn't want to have copyright issues. So with that being said, there is no video for that Milwaukee breakdown with us doing a live reaction to Giannis getting upset about us stealing the game ball and all that crap. But this one will be on YouTube probably Monday morning at some point. But with that being said, if you're hoping the Pacers can end this 3-game losing streak, the only 3-game losing streak they've had of the year so far, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.